Hello, listeners and fellow book lovers. Welcome to The Book Snug, a bi-weekly conversational podcast about books and the reading life. My name is Stephany.
And I'm Juliet.
We're a mother and a daughter who love reading and talking about books, the ones we adore and the ones we don't. We're delighted you're here, so grab your favorite hot drink or ice-cold beverage and settle in for another cozy, bookish chat. Hi, Julia.
Hi, Mom.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
May has been incredibly busy.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like I've been going at breakneck speed, and I'm the type of person that needs just a little bit of margin to be by myself and rest. And I feel like I have not been getting much of that.
It has been hold on for dear life. No wonder I'm tired all the time. I have to be on all the time.
So it's nice to be here in the Book Snug and take a little bit of time, just the two of us, to talk books and have fun.
Yeah.
What do you have in your mug?
It's a chai. It's stash. So I needed, it's just something warm. I'm tired, so I didn't want anything too perky or wired or.
You want to be able to go to sleep
I want to sleep tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm drinking a decaf tea too because I am just afraid if I did anything else, I'd be bouncing off the walls half the night.
Yeah.
I'm just drinking my standard decaf Earl Grey tea.
Both good, cozy choices. So,
Yep, it's fun to sip and talk.
Check there, I guess.
Welcome, listeners, to the Book Snug.
Hi, friends.
Today we are going to be continuing our fairy tale talks by looking at Beauty and the Beast, talking about its origins, and then just discussing some retellings that we've really enjoyed. For me, not all of them will be retellings. Some of the books are just going to be the starting point for the story, the Beauty and the Beast concept or trope, really, with beastly man.
Yeah. Pretty lady.
Yeah.
Some kind of reason why they're thrown together.
Right, and have to deal with each other.
And happy endings.
Right, yeah.
There we go. There's Beauty and the Beast. End of episode.
I guess we're done.
Goodbye. See you next week.
Before we jump into Beauty and the Beast, which is my favorite fairy tale, by the way, I want to make one small little disclaimer about a book that we discussed in our last chapter on Cinderella retellings. I shared a book that I was in the midst of reading and really enjoying called The Fairy Godmother by Mercedes Lackey. I got further into the book. I still enjoyed it, but I just want to let any reader know who might be interested in picking it up that it is open door. And it kind of caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting it because her other book that I recently read was completely closed door. There was nothing spicy, but this book gets into the spicy. So just beware. I still recommend it. If you don't like spicy or steamy scenes, just skip those. There aren't many, and they're not pages and pages. It's just a couple paragraphs, and then you move on, and you can certainly enjoy that whole book without reading those few paragraphs.
Sure.
So that's my little revisit of our last chapter. Now we can get into Beauty and the Beast.
Okay.
So you gave us like an overview synopsis of what this story is.
Been there, done that.
But I think that we should delve a little bit deeper. Beauty and the Beast, in comparison to Cinderella, is a much newer fairy tale. The version that we know and the version that Disney based their animated and their live action versions on comes from a story printed in 1740 called La Belle et la Bête, and that is simply French for Beauty and the Beast. Of course, it was written by a French person, and I'm going to butcher their name, but the author of this Beauty and the Beast tale is Gabrielle Suzanne de Villeneuve. It was a novella. It was 100 pages long, so not your typical fairy tale. Usually fairy tales are just a few pages and done. This one was truly a story. And it goes into great detail about the backgrounds of the beauty character, whose name is Belle, and the Beast, and how they come together, and all the side characters that are involved. The interesting thing about this version is the beast character was a prince who was sent to live with an evil fairy because his father died suddenly and his mother was left to run the kingdom, and she didn't feel like she could take care of her son well. So she sent him away. I'm not sure why she sent him to an evil fairy, but she did. He grew up with this evil fairy, and of course he turned into a beautiful young man, very attractive. And the evil fairy tried to seduce him, and he wasn't having any of it.
Sounds like backwards Oedipus complex.
So, of course, evil fairy got very angry and turned him into a beast.
Sure.
Kind of like the story, for those of you who are familiar with the story of Joseph in Genesis in the Bible. Joseph was a young man who was sold into slavery by his brothers because he was the favorite son of their father, and they were jealous. And Joseph ends up in the household of Potiphar. And he does so well, and he's so well liked that he becomes the manager of the household. And he grows into a handsome man, and Potiphar's wife keeps hitting on him. And she gets so frustrated with Joseph because he keeps rebuffing her that the last time she tries, she grabs his coat and then takes it to Potiphar and says, Joseph's trying to seduce me, and he gets thrown in jail. So it's the same type of story. When I was reading about the Beauty and the Beast fairy tales that we know, I just thought it was interesting that there was such an easy comparison between the two stories.
Sure, but I guess pick your poison, being thrown in jail or like
turned into a beast.
Right.
Right.
I don't know which is the better option.
So having said all that, we talked about Cinderella being an old fairy tale that originated in Egypt, really. This story that we know about Beauty and the Beast originated in France in the mid-1700s. It was shortly after that another French writer, and again, I'm going to butcher the name of the writer, last name is Beaumont, I think. Jean-Marie Le Prince de Beaumont.
Good job.
Took the original La Belle et la Bête and condensed it. And also made some changes to reflect the political environment of France at the time and some of the societal changes that were going on. But that's the version. This condensed version is really what we know as the Beauty and the Beast tale. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Beauty and the Beast, Julia, do you want to help me out to tell this story? The Beast is a prince.
Yes.
And he starts out as this very arrogant, selfish, inhospitable.
Very self-important.
Yes, young man who turns a witch away from his door, and she gets mad at him and turns him into a beast.
And part of that is a curse of this will be lifted when the condition of true love is met.
Right. And the true love has to be a kiss. And it has to come from a woman who falls in love with the beast as he is. And part of that curse setup has to do with the fact that this witch came to the castle as an old, ugly woman.
Seeking refuge or
right.
something.
She was a hag, and he was repulsed by the way she looked. And she was testing him, and he failed the test. Okay. So that's our beast character. And not only does she curse him, but she also curses the castle and the whole property that belonged to the prince.
The whole thing.
And then the Belle character is a young woman who is originally part of a wealthy family. Her father's a merchant. They lose all their money because his ships are lost. Yeah. I think, too, in the original version, her older sisters are kind of
self-important.
Yes. Yeah. Very vain, very concerned with status and wealth.
Almost takes on a Cinderella stepsister kind of vein.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking. But they have to sell everything and move away. And in the process of all of this happening, they move away. And then the father finds out that one of his ships has come in. So he has to go back to the city. And when he's traveling, because he thinks all of his wealth is going to come back, he asks his daughters, what do they want? And of course, the two older sisters ask for jewels and gorgeous dresses.
Fabrics. And,
And wonderful Belle asks for a rose. Okay.
Because she specifically stipulates, I don't want to cause trouble. Right. Or just a rose.
Yeah. So what happens, Julia?
Well, on the way back, the father remembers to get a rose for Belle.
Right.
And stumbles upon a rose garden and plucks what he thinks is the most beautiful rose out of the bunch. Next thing he knows, the beast is there, threatening him because he took a rose.
From his garden.
Yes. And I forget exactly how the bargain is struck.
Yeah.
But in return for the father's safety, he is then held to a condition that he needs to return in 2 weeks to be
his prisoner.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Belle offers to go in his stead.
Or, I think, yes. Or the beast wants to know who the rose is for.
Yes.
And the man says it's for my daughter. So the beast says, well, you can bring her back.
Right. It's one of yeah.
Yeah. So, of course, the father is devastated, but he's also scared to death because he knows this beast is magical and he thinks he has power to...
And violent and scary. And...
Right. So, anyway, Belle ends up back at the castle with the beast. And the story progresses from there as they get to know one another. And Belle does eventually fall in love with the beast. There are some things that happen in that part of the story where she's at the castle, but she does eventually get to the point where she recognizes she loves him. When she kisses him, the beast changes back into a prince, of course, and they live happily ever after.
A prince who has developed his personality and his character a little bit more.
Yes, he's a completely different person.
Yes.
When he becomes human again.
Yes. One of the things that I think, at least growing up, I didn't realize until later, and I don't know why it's kept out of the Disney movies, but another condition of the beast's curse is that he has to ask Belle every night at dinner if she would marry him.
Right.
And that's another really good measure, I guess, of looking at their relationship, because at the beginning of Belle being there, she's running away in horror, terrified, won't answer the question. Right. And as they develop their friendship, then they begin to have more conversations about it. So it's another really good example of looking at both of their character growth. Yeah.
Like you said in the beginning, she's horrified that he's asking her.
Yeah.
And then it gets to the point where it makes her sad that he
has to say no.
Yeah, she has to say no. There are some items that are part of this story that we expect to see in a Beauty and the Beast tale. The rose is one. Another thing is a magic wood or a haunted wood, some kind of wood that surrounds the beast's castle. The castle is usually magical because it's cursed. There's
some kind of enchantment.
There's an enchantment. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for. There are mirrors involved in this story. The beast uses mirrors to see what's happening outside of his kingdom. And he also offers a mirror to Belle at one point. So there are some symbols that we would expect to see even in a Beauty and the Beast retelling. And I have found that in most of the retellings I encounter, not everything is in the story, but there's some symbol that does show up over and over again.
Yeah. Two things that I want to mention about the story that I don't think any of our books are going to touch on.
Okay.
Firstly, I do know with Beauty and the Beast, in the conversations about the story, that Stockholm Syndrome comes into play.
Yes.
And briefly, Stockholm Syndrome is the idea that people who are in captive situations for generally prolonged periods of time begin to develop sympathy and or, in some cases, true affection for their captives or their captors.
Yeah.
And that's a really fascinating conversation to have with this story.
Yes.
But we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about that today.
Right. And you could, with Beauty and the Beast in particular, you could go really dark with that. Talking about a woman falling in love with a beast, an animal, like that whole concept of attraction,
bestiality?
Yes.
Question mark.
Yes, actually, has been a discussion that I've come across. But
no, thank you.
This is not that kind of podcast.
No.
And the reason that I love Beauty and the Beast so much is because it has a very lovely moral lesson of looking beyond a person's physical appearance to discover their heart and their character. And that is very, very moving and important for me. It's also biblical. I mean, if we really want to get into it, there are Bible verses that specifically discuss that humans look at the outer appearance of a person, but God looks at the heart. That is what he cares about, what is going on inside a person, their deepest thoughts, their deepest feelings, who they truly are, because your appearance is only part of who you are. And frankly, people who are attractive can sometimes be not very nice people. They often get away with things
pretty privileged.
Yeah, pretty privileged, that people who are not physically attractive or who don't fit the societal standards of beauty cannot get away with. People who are attractive are often considered over unattractive people as candidates for jobs,
role models.
Yeah. And we're not even going to talk about what happens in high school as far as who the pretty people are and who aren't. So it's a very interesting conversation. Yeah. But one of the reasons I'm drawn to the Beauty and the Beast fairy tales, I just really am drawn to the concept of looking past what people look like to who they really are on the inside.
Yeah. Well, and that's such a good point too. I saw something online a little bit ago of somebody who was pointing out something very similar of both Gaston the Beast and Belle represent. We didn't even talk about Gaston in our overview, did we?
Yeah, no.
Gaston being the foil to the Beast is, I think, maybe a good way to put that.
He's this muscular, burly, handsome man.
Everybody's favorite. Pretty privileged.
Right, exactly. But he's a bully.
Yeah, very much. But in this post, they were saying that each of those characters, Gaston, Beast, and Belle, represent very different aspects of people deemed acceptable and unacceptable by society. Gaston, who is pretty privileged.
Yes.
Gets away with so much crap because he's deemed socially acceptable, and they kind of just brush it off as, oh, it's Gaston.
Yeah.
Belle, who is Belle, which translates to beautiful, is kind of marked off as being weird because she loves to read instead of other things.
Right. So even though she is pretty, she doesn't really enjoy all the pretty privilege because she's odd.
Right.
Now, I wouldn't think she's odd,
I
but
agree.
by societal standards, she's odd.
Right. And then the Beast, kind of the final example here, they were saying in this post that even though he's the Beast and he looks ferocious and terrifying, that at least at the time that the story of Beauty and the Beast takes place, he's very nice to the people that he oversees. Very,
they're his family,
Right.
basically.
He's become brokenhearted because of the curse. And in the Disney movie, they pointed out that at the time that the townspeople are coming to attack him, that he just looks tired. Like, this is something that he's put up with for his whole life.
Right.
And
or for a very long time. Yeah.
Right. And it was just something that I had never thought about with the story before, of how that's a whole other theme in here as well, of how people can kind of get away with certain things or be written off if they don't fit certain standards or groupings of how we expect people to be in society as well.
Yeah. It's a very interesting conversation. I mean, I could talk about it.
Yeah.
Well, you and I both have psych degrees.
Yes.
And so it's always interesting to dig into that part of fairy tales and folklore and myth. Yes.
Yeah.
How they, in very interesting ways, talk about and demonstrate what really happens in humanity. It's quite interesting.
Yeah.
Even though I said that Beauty and the Beast is relatively new as far as fairy tales go, some scholars believe that the concept of Beauty and the Beast is based in myth, specifically the myth of Cupid and Psyche. And I'm not going to go into depth about that myth, but that's the story of Cupid, who could make people fall in love with his quote unquote poisoned arrows,
Right.
that had love potions on them. Well, he stuck himself with an arrow and he fell in love with Psyche, and he takes her away. And she lives in this beautiful castle, and he comes to visit her every night, but she's not allowed to look at him.
Oh.
Okay. So that is the basic myth of Cupid and Psyche. Things happen.
Sure, because it's myths.
She's tricked into seeing him, and then everything falls apart. But that some scholars believe that the Beauty and the Beast tale kind of comes out of that myth. Okay. And then you mentioned another myth, Julia, which is
Persephone and Hades.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of parallels.
I think so too. When you mentioned that, I absolutely could see the connection. That myth, do you want to explain what that myth is? Do you know what it is, or do you want me to do it?
I do. I mean, I might butcher some details, and I know that there are conflicting theories of whether Persephone does it purposefully or doesn't do it purposefully. But
whether she's a captive or she willingly goes.
Yeah. Long story short, Persephone is the daughter of Demeter, I believe, and Demeter is the goddess of the harvest. Yeah. So Persephone,
the natural world, the season.
Yeah. So Persephone is out in the fields doing her thing, helping her mother, and then Hades shows up. And I don't remember how the bargain gets struck.
Well, there's no bargain in the beginning. He actually steals her.
Right.
And Demeter is so angry, and she presents her case to the gods, and that's how the bargain gets struck.
So then the bargain becomes that Persephone is essentially stuck with being Hades' wife, but she can have 6 months in the underworld and 6 months above. And so in that regard, it does take on the Beauty and the Beast theming as well.
Yeah.
So tons of history. It seems like we have so much more to talk about with Beauty and the Beast than we did Cinderella.
Cinderella, yeah. Well, because it's more applicable. Cinderella is a very kind, lovely girl who gets a lot of help to meet a prince and make her life better. Right. It's really hard to apply that to a regular everyday life. Yeah. But the concept of Beauty and the Beast and some of the things that we're talking about, it just seems like it's a lot easier to make it a life lesson. I don't know. We could be totally blowing smoke. Who knows?
Yeah, right. We could be making things bigger than they need to be. But I think Cinderella is definitely... It's like a little girl's big major wish, whereas Beauty and the Beast, though I'm not going to go out into the wild and find some man cursed as a beast that needs kissed or whatever, but that idea is very much applying of learning to love somebody past what you can see.
The symbolism is a lot more applicable. Yeah. Before we jump into our actual book suggestions, I do want to say that even though we're talking about the French versions of this fairy tale, there are versions of Beauty and the Beast worldwide, once again, just like Cinderella. What I find most fascinating is that the beast changes shape depending on where in the world you're reading the story. A lot of cultures like the snake as the beast.
Which I wonder, I just had this thought, I wonder if there's some tie back to the biblical statement of the serpent.
In the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that.
I didn't either. And now I feel like I need to investigate all of that.
Yeah. So the Indian Beauty and the Beast, the Chinese Beauty and the Beast, and the Russian Beauty and the Beast all have snakes for the beast character.
That would be a little bit more beastly for me than like a hairy thing.
Right. There is a Scottish version, kind of like a folktale-y version, where the beast is a small-toothed dog. The Danish have a Beauty and the Beast tale that has a horse as the beast.
I'm picturing like a centaur. I wonder if there's...
It's possible.
I can't even imagine.
The Swiss beast is a bear.
Makes sense.
And then in Italy, the beast is a fire-breathing dragon.
Love that. I want to read those versions right now, please and thank you.
The other thing I want to say, because we talked about Cupid and Psyche, if you want to read a retelling of that, that's very good. C.S. Lewis wrote a retelling of Cupid and Psyche, which is called Till We Have Faces. And it's told from the perspective of one of Psyche's sisters. And she plays a bad guy in part of that story because she's the one who encourages her sister to trick Cupid into revealing himself, or that she's able to see him.
Yeah.
It's very good.
Well, we love C.S. Lewis here, so.
We do. Okay, so I think we've covered all the background. It's probably time to get into the books. So what is the first book that you want to talk about, Julia?
Well, I think the first book we want to talk about is one that we share.
Oh, yeah, that's
which
right.
is Beauty by Robin McKinley.
Yes.
This is a book that I grew up hearing that you love.
Yes.
And I think I read it for the first time in physical after having listened to it on audio from you.
Because I made everybody listen to it.
Yeah.
Even Mark and Aaron on a trip. I'm pretty sure on a trip to the beach,
Yes.
we all listened to it together.
Sometime.
Yeah.
I have memories of listening to it.
And everybody loved it.
Yes.
This retelling is pretty true to the standard Beauty and the Beast fairy tale. But what makes it interesting, there's a couple interesting things. First of all, the author, Robin McKinley, wrote it when she was quite young. I don't know if she was in high school or college, but she wrote it for an assignment and gave it to a teacher. And to write the quality of book that she wrote is just amazing at that young age.
Speaks of talent.
Yeah. What else do you like about this particular retelling?
For me, I just love that it's a solid fairy tale. And I think when I want to read a fairy tale or I love fairy tale retellings or adaptations, but sometimes I just want a good, solid fairy tale world. And for me, Beauty is that.
Right.
It is not saccharine. It's not overly done. Beauty is a very relatable character.
She is.
Almost, I think, bordering on self-deprecating at the beginning, but very relatable. And all of the characters are likable. Like her family is not awful to her. And so you just kind of feel their loss, I think, when she does go to the Beast. And I think it just makes for an overall much more enjoyable fairy tale, maybe, because all parts of it are good.
Yes.
Even the Beast himself in the castle and everything else, it good.
Yeah. Even though he's gruff and he's not used to interacting with humans in the beginning, he's incredibly generous and very, can I say kind? I just feel like from the beginning, he was kind to Belle.
Yeah.
He was gruff because he liked her from the beginning and he wasn't sure how to interact with her. And he knew that she found him completely repulsive, but yeah, you like him from the beginning. At least I did. The magic in this book is just exactly what you would expect for a fairy tale. It's just wonderful. And the fact that Robin McKinley took the family situation and even made that good. The sisters are lovely.
Yeah.
They all take care of each other and they care about each other. And this story has all of those symbols we talked about. The rose plays a huge part. The forest is magical, and it actually almost keeps Belle from getting back to the Beast at the end. She can't find the trail to get to the castle. There's a mirror, and then enchanted lands and castle. Yeah, it's just wonderful.
And I don't think that's even something that we really specified. At the end of the story, Belle comes back to the Beast because she knows that he's hurt and dying.
Or she's afraid he is.
Yes, because of whatever part of the curse it is, whether because it's caught like really close to the end of it or whatever. Yeah. Whereas in the Disney movie, she's there during the whole fight.
Right.
And I think that theming is going to come back in some of our other stories too, of that element of...
Yeah, she leaves the Beast.
Yeah.
And that is when he starts to deteriorate. And she has to come back. And it's that leaving and coming back is when she realizes she loves him.
Yeah.
The one thing that does change between this story and the Beauty and the Beast, and the Robin McKinley book was first, before the Beauty and the Beast that Walt Disney did. Okay. This is older.
Sure.
There's no Gaston figure. No. There's no bad figure that comes to the Beast and wants to kill him.
Yeah. No love triangle.
Yeah. Beauty leaves the Beast because
there's a family thing.
There's a family thing and she needs to go back and he lets her go.
Yeah.
She promises to come to him, but she almost doesn't make it back in time. And because she's left, he just starts to deteriorate, and she finds him, and he's almost gone. Yeah. Wonderful book.
Yeah.
Wonderful book.
Yeah.
I reread it regularly. I have it on audio, so I listen to it sometimes. The only thing I will say is that the older I get, now I'm 54, I do find Belle in the beginning of the story to be just a little bit whiny, but she's a teenager. She's a teenager, and
Right. And
bad things are happening. So,
and Robin McKinley makes it very evident at the beginning that though her name is Beauty, her older sisters are the beautiful ones. That Beauty is describing herself as not pretty and has acne and all of this. And so it makes sense with the whininess and everything.
Yeah.
So
she definitely doesn't see herself as pretty.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with the Beast, because he thinks she's beautiful from the get-go, and he doesn't understand why she keeps saying, I'm not beautiful. So just a fun book.
Yeah, it's the perfect one. So for me, for spring this year, all I've wanted is to picnic for hours and to read a good fairy tale. Now, I've been able to picnic, but I'm not reading a fairy tale just yet. Pride and Prejudice has my attention. So
well, that's
just
close
as
to
lovely.
A fairy tale.
However, Beauty is the perfect picnic book. It's not very long. It is, for me, I like Beauty better than I like the Gregory Maguire fairy tale retellings, because it feels more lively, more spring, more
light,
cottage core, you know.
Yeah.
And it
lovely.
is,
And it's because all the characters are likable and there's so much magic. Yeah. I agree.
It's a good recommendation for people out there.
Yeah. The next book we're going to talk about is a beloved favorite of Julia's. I think you said it's your favorite book of all time.
Yes. It is a comfort book for me that I read pretty regularly.
And it's a book that I love for sure. We want to bring Jane Eyre to the table by Charlotte Brontë and just talk about how Jane Eyre reflects the Beauty and the Beast story.
Yes.
We're not going to talk about the whole story.
No, Jane needs her own time.
She does. But it is a story that definitely has components of the Beauty and the Beast fairy tale.
Yeah.
Jane Eyre is the story of a young girl who is orphaned, and she is sent to live with a mean, nasty aunt and very spoiled cousins.
Yeah, bad family.
And they end up bringing out the worst in Jane.
Yes.
And because of that, the aunt sends her away to a
Lowood.
Lowood school for girls, which is
not good.
No, it's a boarding school in the mid 1800s.
A poorly financed
boarding school. Yes. She grows up there, loses a dear friend there.
And a favorite teacher, but for different reasons.
Yes. And she becomes a teacher there. And then she decides that she is going to take her life into her own hands, and she advertises as a governess and gets a position at Thornfield Hall. And there she meets Mr. Rochester.
I'm just getting happy talking about this.
There is somewhat of an aspect of Cinderella at the beginning of the story with her evil aunt and the evil cousins and being mistreated so badly. But we do definitely move into Beauty and the Beast territory once we get to Thornfield Hall. And even the first time that she and Mr. Rochester meet, it's almost like a Beauty and the Beast meeting, because she's walking down the road. He is coming back to Thornfield Hall after being away from for a while, and he's riding this big horse with this big dog.
And it's all foggy.
Right, and he almost runs her over.
And he calls her a spirit or something.
A sprite or
a witch.
Something like that. And he falls off his horse because the horse startles when he sees Jane. And he's really kind of nasty to her in the beginning. So that's where the beastly aspect comes in, and Jane Eyre. Yeah. So what are some of the other things you think reflect the Beauty and the Beast story?
I think this one is a bit of a stretch, but bear with me.
Okay.
The Enchanted Castle.
Okay.
because it's not a legit enchantment over the property, but there is something there.
Yeah.
And it affects everybody.
Right. And
it does break at one point, which then releases Jane and Mr. Rochester. And I think in the story, there's a definitive language reflection of that from when there's the curse and when there isn't.
Right. And we just want to stress it's not an actual curse.
There is no magic in the story.
But there is a definite
thing.
Yes. Yes. And it gives the place of a vibe.
A shadow. Yeah.
Yeah, that is one aspect of Beauty and the Beast. And that's a good one, Juliet.
I'm very proud of myself for that one. One of the things I think is interesting is they are separate. Thornfield Hall is away from the town, and Jane is kind of stuck there. She's doing it of her own volition, but she's there, and and I almost said the Beast is there. I mean,
and Mr. Rochester is there. And the interesting thing is, once Jane is at the house, he stays. Generally, he's out traveling around, but he chooses to stay. Yeah. And they have a relationship that develops over time where he becomes less and less gruff with her.
She softens him.
Yes, very much. And she definitely begins to fall in love with him. So you have this whole story arc of a burgeoning romance. And for Jane, it's the first time in her life she's ever been attracted to anybody or...
Well, and even in a place where she's cherished.
Right.
Even apart from Mr. Rochester.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the little girl, and oh my word, help me, her name is completely... Adele. Adele loves her.
Adele Veron.
Yes. The housekeeper...
Oh my gosh.
Loves her.
What is her name? Anyway, the housekeeper.
Yeah. And yes, they miss her. She has to go away at one point because her aunt is dying. So
Hallelujah.
she is called away, just like in the Beauty and the Beast story where Belle is called back to her family. And I think it's during that time that Mr. Rochester realizes,
oh crap,
he can't live without her.
Yeah.
So that's another way that Jane Eyre reflects Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah.
And then I think there's an interesting ending that kind of flips the beast concept on its head.
Yeah.
There's a part in the story where the house burns down. Yes. I'm not going to tell you why, but there is a disaster. And it happens without Jane's knowledge because she's not there. Something is going on that Mr. Rochester has to go into the burning building. And in the process, he gets burned pretty bad and he loses his sight. And he has to leave Thornfield Hall and they have to move somewhere else. After that happens, Jane returns and she finds him. He is no longer a vital, healthy 30-something man. He's a broken man, scarred, can't see.
Yeah.
He has two people who are taking care of him and that's it. And so she kind of finds him. He has turned into, he looks like a beast.
He is more physical beast than personality beast.
Right. He's actually flipped. Like his actual personality is much more humble and broken, but his appearance is more beastly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there is a happily ever after
there
too.
is.
So that's what...
Yeah.
That whole, everything makes it feel like a fairy tale. And I wonder if Charlotte Brontë kind of riffed on Beauty and the Beast as like a starting place for her story.
I'd be so curious.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, now I just want to talk about Jane Eyre the rest of the time. Because there's so much good stuff in that story.
There is a lot. I'm going to use a word I hate that people use, but I'm going to say it anyway. There's a lot to unpack in Jane Eyre. Okay. So, is there anything you want to say? Anything else you want to say about Jane Eyre in relationship?
Well, how much time do we have?
Just in relationship to Beauty and the Beast.
I think that's a good starting point, and hopefully people come back to hear our full episode about Jane Eyre
whenever
later.
we get around to talking about her in depth. What we're going to do for the rest of the show is we're going to do more popcorn reviews of other books that kind of reflect the Beauty and the Beast tale. Maybe they don't follow the story arc completely, or they don't have all the symbols that we look for in the story, but they have a feel of Beauty and the Beast. So these are going to be quicker suggestions. So why don't you just go first, Julia? What book do you want to talk about?
Yeah. The first one it's a YA read. It's Beastly by Alex Finn. Now this book came out around the same time as like Twilight or Beautiful Creatures, like that kind of era. And it takes the Beauty and the Beast story and puts it in modern day private New York City school. So our Beast is, I think it's Kyle Kingsbury. Goodreads was not helping me identify the name.
His name.
Yeah. He is self-important. He's popular. He's a senior getting ready to graduate. And he purposefully slights, but accidentally slights a witch, if that makes sense. Purposefully does it, doesn't know she's a witch.
Right. He's purposely being nasty.
Yes. And she curses him in a way that it takes all of his physical appearance away. I don't remember how it's described in the book, but it kind of comes out like tattoos and physical injuries all over the place. And the stipulation is that he has 2 years from the point in which he's cursed to find love based on who he is, and that he has to learn how to love other people, or he will be cursed like that for the rest of his life. So the story unfolds in how that's supposed to happen. Lindy Owens becomes our Belle character. Now the story is told from Kyle's perspective. There is a Rose element, which is how Lindy gets involved. And it does kind of build to the point where we're at that, like the clock is ticking on the curse, and then, the whole thing. There is a movie made about this story starring Vanessa Hudgens and Alex Pettyfer.
Yeah, I remember seeing that with you.
And I read this. I'm just going to out myself here a little bit, because I read this at the same time that I was reading Romeo and Juliet in middle school. So I thought this was the epitome of a love story.
You don't think you would think that anymore?
No. And looking back on it now and reading some of the dialogue that was on Goodreads, if you like YA with internal dialogue, this is a perfectly fine book for you. I don't
anymore.
No.
Yeah.
No. However, it is still a really good modern play on the story.
On Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah. In this one, like we were talking about the elements of the story, I think I mentioned, but there are roses. So that comes back and forth a couple of times in the story. And I think even the cover of the book has a rose on it as well.
Yeah.
So that's my first popcorn.
Okay. This is my first popcorn piece. I am going to recommend Heart's Blood by Juliet Marillier. This is a pretty faithful Beauty and the Beast retelling, but it's based historically in 12th century England. And the Belle character is a young woman who has recently lost her father suddenly. In the book, it's presented like he had a heart attack.
Sure.
He was a scribe, and he taught her how to be a scribe. And she was basically doing most of his work when he died. So she was good at it. She's left alone, and there are distant cousins who come and move in with her, really without being asked. They kind of just take over, and they physically and mentally abuse her.
Yikes.
So she runs away. She takes her scribe box. She gets on a carriage and she just goes. And she's trying to get away from them. And she wants to start a business or work for someone and take care of herself. She ends up in this very small town out in the middle of nowhere and finds out that there is a chieftain on a nearby mountain called Whistling Tor that needs a scribe. He wants some of his books in his library copied over. she can't wait to go. Like, she heads out right away. But the person who told her about the job was trying to keep her from going, telling her the woods are haunted. It's not a good place for you. You'll never make it to the top. People disappear on the mountain. But she goes anyway, and she gets to the mountain and finds 2 men who help her get to the top. And that is where she meets the beast character. The girl's name is Katrine or Katrin, and the beast's name is Anne Lewin. And he is the chieftain of that area, but he is deformed from a childhood illness, and he struggles because he has some physical deformities. So he is not really ugly to look at, but he does have a disability. And that is what makes he himself feel like he is unworthy.
And that's a good stipulation.
Yeah. It's not that other people around him. The other thing about this is there are people with him at the castle. He is not alone. And the people that are with him are extremely loyal to him and love him. So that is the setup for this Beauty and the Beast story. There are things that happen that force Anne Lewin to meet with other chieftains. There's an invasion coming and they really need to protect themselves. And Katrin is kind of like the power behind getting him to go out and be a chieftain and do what he needs to do. There's a curse. Kind of what makes the woods haunted is also connected to this curse. There's not magic like we talked about magic in Beauty by Robin McKinley, but there is like black magic. So we're talking witches and supernatural and that kind of thing.
So where Robin McKinley is light magic, Beauty is light magic, this is dark magic.
This definitely has a darker, eerier tone.
Okay.
I will say that the author used the word eldritch so many times that when I ever read it in another book now, it makes my eyes twitch. It's just eerie. So it definitely has a darker feel. But the reason I like this book so much is Katrin, she makes everything happen. Now she's not presented as like this super special snowflake. She is just a girl who wants to be able to make her way in the world. She wants to get away from her evil cousins, and she wants to use her skills. And really that is the driving factor through all of this. But she falls in love with Anne Lewin, and it ends up being a Beauty and the Beast retelling with great characters. And it's always a test for me. If I look forward to getting in bed with my book and reading, it's good. And I couldn't wait every night to get in bed and read a little bit more of the story. So that is Heart's Blood by Juliet Marillier. Okay. The author, writes a lot of historically based stories that feel like fairy tales.
So then I should be reading her stuff.
Yes, you should give her stuff a try. And this is a good place to start because it's a standalone. It's not in a series, and it's good.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. I'll add it to my growing list.
What's your next book?
My next one is Cruel Beauty by Rosamund Hodge. This takes the Beauty and the Beast story and combines it with gods, myths, and legends.
Okay.
And the beast character in this story, his name is Ignifex. Try saying that 5 times fast.
Sounds like a demon.
Well, I think that's what he's actually crafted as.
Okay.
Through a badly done bargain on Belle, Nyx is her character, on her father's part, the kingdom in which she lives has to give their firstborn daughter of every ruling, it's like a king or a duke or lord, the ruling family of this area, their firstborn daughter has to be given to Ignifex to pay a debt.
Okay.
And they're given in marriage. Now, this marriage is not, it's not like a wedding ceremony. It's like a wedding as in like you're going, never going to see you again situation.
Almost like a sacrifice.
Yeah.
Gloomy and brooding. Yeah.
Not a happy, joyful wedding situation. Yeah. Ignifex is this, if I recall, he's supposed to be kind of crafty. So nobody can figure out how to break this curse because none of the previous daughters have come back.
Yeah.
But on this point of him being a demon, I was reading this at the point in which I was going to a summer camp one year, and the counselor I was with asked what I like to do. I mentioned reading, and she asked what book I had just finished, and it was this. And I was talking about how it's Beauty and the Beast meets Gods and Demons, and she asked me, "What are you reading?" I thought you were a Christian. Of course, in jest, but I just always remember thinking of that.
Yeah.
In this story, it kind of takes on the role of a quest at some point, because Nyx, in order to break this curse with Ignifex, after she realizes he is not going to kill her when she gets there, begins to look and hunt around the castle for, I want to say it's like his soul, so kind of like a Horcrux, but I could be misremembering those details. Anyway, she has to track all these pieces down, and that's going to help break the curse. So there's that quest there. The castle is enchanted that she's living in. It's a beautiful castle. She's well taken care of. There are servants, and I don't want to give too much away.
Yeah.
But there are servants. However, they are not servants you can see. So in her bedroom specifically is when she's interacting with them. She'll just see trays of food move around, and then there's a third element, and I'm forgetting what it is. Oh, she does go back to her family at one point.
Okay.
I forget why, and I forget how, but she does go back to her family, and her family is not very nice to her either, both before and after. And I think that was just the part of she was destined to go away and not come back.
So they were trying not to care about her because she was going to be a disposable.
Yeah. If you have read For the Wolf by Hannah Witten and were kind of iffy on it, I like Cruel Beauty better than For the Wolf. I think it does it much better. I think the structure is set up better. I think the story is easier to understand. And I found Nyx to be capable.
Yeah.
Whereas Red, I didn't think was capable. And I found the romance between Ignifex and Nyx, oh gosh, what names, to be equal.
Yeah.
An equal romance on each side. So I really enjoyed this book. And I think you said, Mom, that you have read it too.
Yeah, you gave it to me to read after you. I don't think I enjoyed it as much as you did, but I don't think it was the story so much as the fact that it's another young adult book. And I just, young adult is hit or miss for me. And young adult fantasy usually doesn't hit the mark. So
I think if I were to read this one now, which I probably should because it's been a while, but if I were to read it now, I would not rate it as highly as I had through when I read it initially.
Yeah.
Because I don't like YA relationships either. I think they're a little too moody and dramatic and toxic. But that's just me.
Yeah. My last suggestion is actually a trio of romances that take the Beauty and the Beast trope of beautiful girl, beastly, quote unquote man, and a love story and put it all together. These stories are probably the farthest removed from actual Beauty and the Beast fairy tale retellings because they don't follow the story arc. They just start with the concept of a pretty girl, a beastly man for whatever reason. Either he's scarred from war or he has this horrible reputation and they fall in love and live happily ever after. So the 3 books I'm going to recommend are Romancing the Duke by Tessa Dare, which is open door. So, and it does have a lot of sexy time. So if you don't like that, then you might not like this. Or if you're okay skipping those parts, because again, for me, I can take or leave those parts and the rest of the story is fine.
Yeah.
The reason I'm recommending this is because it's a hoot. It's very campy. It's a Regency romance with very modern sensibilities. And it's actually making fun of some of the pop culture things that are happening today that she puts in the story. Like there are fan clubs. Just it's just fun.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely fun. So if that interests you, then I would say read it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's probably my favorite Tessa Dare. I went through like a Tessa Dare binge a couple years ago, maybe right about the time COVID first started. She always writes Open Door. So, and I would just say skip it because I usually do.
Yeah. That one sounds like Bringing Down the Duke by Evie Dunmore.
Yes.
Which was also fun.
Yes.
No.
Also Open Door.
Also very, very Open
and
Door.
Not Beauty and the Beast retelling.
No, not at all. But the same similar idea. Although I think Bringing Down the Duke is a little bit later in history. I don't think it's Regency. I think it's a little bit later.
Like mid 1800s.
Because they're doing women's vote.
Yeah,
anyway, it's the
1800s.
same kind of feel.
So that is Romancing the Duke by Tessa Dare. Oh, and the beauty character has an ermine as a pet that she calls Snowball. So that's just like an added little cute thing.
It just sounds fun.
Yeah. The second book, and I really enjoyed this story because I loved the relationship between the Belle character and the Beast character, is called Ravished. It's by Amanda Quick. The Belle character, and in Romancing the Duke and in Ravished, the Belle character is not beautiful. They're actually... One is described as being unusual looking, and the other is just plain. She's not beautiful. She's also a geek. She is a fossil collector. She's very focused on that. And the reason that she even gets involved in the Beast character is because she needs a big burly guy to get smugglers out of her caves where the fossils are. So the reason I'm suggesting Ravished by Amanda Quick is just because of the two main characters, and the relationship is I just loved how she wrote them. So those are two open door, absolutely open door romances. And then I have one closed door romance. This is written by Mimi Matthews. It's called Belle of Belgravia. And the Belle character in this romance has really severe social anxiety. And the Beast character is a former war hero, injured in war, is pretty scarred up, has a limp, and they have a marriage of convenience. Like there's a reason why they get married, and then because they're spending so much close time together, they fall in love. But the Belle character proposes to the Beast, so it's kind of a flip it on your head type of trope. But again, the relationship in the Belle of Belgravia between the two main characters is just really nice to read about.
Yeah.
So those are three romances. Start out with like a Beauty and the Beast kind of trope, and go from there.
Gotcha.
Any other books, Julia?
Just two that I just want to mention very quickly because of some of the other things that we've talked about. A picture book that I loved growing up is Bunny and the Beast, which ties back into the English or Scottish version of the Beast.
Because the Beast is a
dog, a bull terrier.
Yeah.
And it is written by Molly Coxe, but it's illustrated by Pamela Silin-Palmer. I want to mention this because it's the illustrations that got me on this, where I talked about a Cinderella picture book being lush and decadent and succulent, maybe? Not succulent.
No.
Well,
sumptuous.
Thank you.
Sumptuous.
The reason I want to say succulent is because there's an image in Bunny and the Beast of somebody eating a cherry pie. Okay. And I don't like cherries, but I remember this image being so well painted that I just wanted to eat it. 100%. But it's the illustrations in this book that are absolutely spectacular. They are so detailed. You could look at every single page for hours and hours and find new details all over the place. It's sweet from beginning to end. And this picture book is also a story in which the Beast asks Belle to marry him every night, which is, I think, how I was introduced to that idea initially. Yeah. So there's that. The second book I just want to mention very quickly, and I didn't get the chance to say this earlier, but on the nature of Stockholm Syndrome, if you're interested in reading something that is kind of similar to that vein, I would recommend Stolen by Lucy Christopher.
Okay.
Which really explores that idea. So kind of related to Beauty and the Beast, but definitely more in this avenue of looking at that Stockholm Syndrome.
Falling in love with your captor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That book is wild. Hold on for dear life.
And then I'm going to list a whole bunch of books that are Beauty and the Beast retellings that I have enjoyed to some degree. Mm-hmm. I haven't really loved them, and these are in no particular order. But if you like a Beauty and the Beast retelling and you're looking for something new, these are some books you could consider. Sure. Probably the one I liked the most was Uprooted by Naomi Novik. Mm-hmm. The Beast in this book is a wizard.
Ooh, fun.
And he requires a girl every 10 years. Mm-hmm. But everybody knows he does not kill those girls. Mm-hmm. They just go and serve him for 10 years. Some people have an issue with this one because the wizard is centuries old. And then you have a young girl who's coming in who's 17 or 18.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Yeah, so the romance can be a little odd. Weird. I didn't think there was much of a romance in this book, so it didn't bother me that much. But it definitely is a Beauty and the Beast type of retelling. A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Brigid Kemmerer.
Oh, I've definitely heard of that one.
This Beauty and the Beast retelling has a Belle character who has a disability, a physical disability, but I'm completely drawing a blank as to what it is. So, and the beast is not always a beast. He is sometimes in a regular physical form and sometimes in a beastly form.
Oh, interesting.
Another one is The Beast's Heart, which is written by Leife Shallcross, I think. Okay. This is from the beast perspective. The whole story is told from his perspective. Interesting. And I did enjoy that. That is YA, though, and it does have a YA feel to it. Mm-hmm. For the Wolf, which you already mentioned, by Hannah Witten, that has a creepy forest, and she has to go and live with the beast character.
Little Red meets Beauty and the Beast.
Okay. And then finally, there is a book called Hunted by Megan Spoon. And the Belle character in this story is a hunter. She actually is very capable. She can hunt. She can actually take care of herself. It's been a little bit since I read this book, and I forget why she ends up with the beast at his castle. But he allows her to hunt on his property.
Interesting.
Yeah. So those are just some other suggestions for Beauty and the Beast retellings.
Wow. It's interesting that just in comparison, it seemed like there were so many books for Cinderella. And we've definitely talked about a lot here, but I think this just goes to show that Cinderella is maybe definitely the more popular of the two. Yeah. I think it'll be really interesting, for me at least, to look at other fairy tales. So like Princess and the Frog or Rapunzel or Sleeping Beauty or some of these other ones, and see how many other kind of books were written adapting those stories as well.
Oh, I have a whole bunch.
Well, nice, Mom.
I mean, we could definitely do this one or two more times for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, May is fairy tale month, so maybe, I don't know, we'll see.
All right.
Yeah.
I think we did Beauty and the Beast justice.
If we didn't, I'm sorry. We talked about a lot of stuff.
I just feel like if you're going to pick any of these books, I would say pick up Beauty by Robin McKinley.
Absolutely. I would agree.
I think you'll be the most satisfied and the most pleased with the story.
Yeah. And I think that's the perfect representation of Beauty and the Beast.
Yes.
Well, if you have been tired of our fairy tale conversations for May, have no fear. June for us is going to be all about beach and summer and all things hot weather. Yeah. We are set to go to the beach at the end of May. So we are already thinking about the books that we're taking to the beach, which fits perfectly because our next episode is beach books.
Or what books do you put in your beach bag?
Yeah. So if you have any beach trips coming up this summer or are curious what we like to take to the beach, tune in for that next chapter. And as always, please rate us and review us wherever you find your podcasts. Connect with us wherever you can find us. Thank you for spending part of your day with us today.
Yes.
We'd love for you to continue today's conversation with us at the BookSnug_podcast on Instagram and at the BookSnug podcast on Facebook. All of our episodes can be found wherever you listen to podcasts, as well as at our website, thebooksnugpodcast.buzzsprout.com, where show notes for every episode can be found. We'd love to hear from you. Email us at thebooksnugpodcast@gmail.com.
As C.S. Lewis, one of our favorite authors, famously said, "You can never have a cup of tea large enough or a book long enough to suit me." And we wholeheartedly agree.